Hello and welcome back to the Failed Breakdown channel. It is Tuesday, January the 6th, and I got IMMW joining me today, and we're going to be discussing the failed breakdown of 6940 that happened this morning before the Open, and then the reclaim of 6951 that happened shortly after the Open. And so, thanks for IM for joining me. And while the level of expertise has increased by an order of magnitude today, having him join me, neither of us are experts, so always defer to Adam for the full breakdown. We're just doing our best to relay the method he's been teaching us over the years. So, with that said, let's get into the recap. So, first of all, we had in the evening session last night, we had the 69.45 reclaim, which a couple of us traded in the Discord for a nice level to level move. For me, my runner stopped out on that overnight, as we flushed back through the 69.40. And I think that's kind of the start of my problems this morning. I was still very much focused on that 69.45 level and looking for the reclaim there, as opposed to really recognizing the lows, the cluster of three different lows that we had right around 69.40. So we had two of them from the afternoon session from yesterday, and then we set a low, maybe a tick or two below that afternoon low in the evening session, and those three then forming a solid level that we could trade the failed breakdown of. So coming into the morning, I think that was the first thing you noticed, right? And that was where you were looking to engage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always every time when I wake up, the first thing I'm doing is just monitoring how the structure from, essentially the hours I was asleep or away from the screens overnight, what's changed, what's been added, do we have new context? So yeah, the first thing I noticed was we had a nice little low at 69.40 we put in last night that, we actually rallied up pretty nicely, almost 20 points, and then lost that when London opened down to 3:30 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we started when I woke up, the first thing I saw was we had kind of been accepting that quite nicely for, a few hours now. And we still had obviously that 45 shelf from last night, so I'm still taking that into consideration and looking to pretty much get along right above 40, 45 for a nice failed breakdown. Again, we had good acceptance going into it, essentially from 4 a.m. onwards. So I felt pretty good about jumping into that long there and having a stop below the overnight low at 69.31 and just taking it as it is. I mean, I think the biggest thing I always like to stress is anytime you do your entry checklist, you have acceptance and you enter, just be comfortable with, both sides of the outcome. So here I personally I like the entry quite a bit. There was a little bit of a cluster of structure between 40, 45, and 51, which kind of made it, a little bit, trickier. And we
Mm-hmm.
kind of had to wait until some volatility came in. But, once we got that off the open, then, we put in a nice little rally straight up for a couple of trims there.
So did you enter maybe around 7:30 Eastern time on the as it pushed up above 45? Is that kind of your entry?
Yeah, I was up by 7:30. So when I woke up, I think we were around like 44 or so. So I was just waiting for 45 to clear at that point, and I
Mm-hmm.
got in. And then, obviously there was a little bit of drawdown. I'd kind of hold that for 40 minutes. We retested
In the pre-market, yeah.
40. Yeah, retested 40 once again. Bounced really nicely actually, which is what you want to see there, right? When you have an active failed breakdown, you're seeing buyers kind of step in. So that was a good little bounce. And then as soon as we opened, we just literally just spawned right all the way up into 51, 52 for a profit take, and then eventually 56 for the next profit take for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that little bounce there was a really nice confirmation for anyone who was in the trade. So I've marked on the screen here kind of the major steps. We got the firstly setting the significant low, which bounced 20 points we set up, and then we get the scary flush elevated down through the level, and then work on reclaiming it and accepting it. And this is one of those times where you've kind of got that low volatility, choppy acceptance, just hanging out around the level. So in many ways, you sort of, by waiting for that 45 structure, you're almost inadvertently applying like the non-acceptance protocol over the top of it, just waiting for it to get ahead of that.
Exactly, exactly. That kind of inherently already put in the little bit getting out of the danger zone. But again, that was more so just because of by the time I woke up, we were essentially already a few points off of 40. But there was definitely very good acceptance. We had initial, I would say, first little type one small acceptance at 4:20 a.m. where we hit 40, then sold off 4 points down to 36, and then we even put in another type two acceptance near 5 a.m. We went up to 44 and then
Mm-hmm.
came back, and we're just essentially kind of like the analogy Adam's been using, right? If you kind of want to see price stick to the level just as kind of like a dog would, right? When you throw something to your dog, it kind of keeps coming back and sticks to that. So that's kind of what we essentially saw for a few hours there with 69.40. So because of that, I felt really good about entering the trade.
Yeah, nice. Well played. For me, I think I just tripped myself up looking at the wrong level. And by the time I got in up here, 46 and a half maybe, um, I just felt like I entered off my analysis of my entry was incorrect. And so I didn't really want to carry a bad entry into a potentially a full stop on what was, at least in my eyes, kind of a certainly not an A plus setup, a mediocre setup to begin with in the middle of a range. So I, for me, would rather cut that for a couple of points loss, which is what I did. Don't often mess with trades, and it's definitely not recommended. Um, but yeah, that's what I did in this case because I felt like I entered in error.
Yeah, but that's a good learning point and something I would stress everyone too is that's almost a moral way of taking a loss, right? Because I think no matter whether you take a win or a loss on paper, what really matters at the end of the day is like, did you understand the setup? Did you learn from it? That to me is going to have way more value over time. So for you, it's like, yeah, sure, you could have taken a win here, but you would have entered, on essentially the wrong analysis. You wouldn't have, known the setup perfectly going into it versus so sometimes I don't think a win on paper is always a win in learning and vice versa. So, you almost kind of learn a little bit more by just taking that little bit of haircut, but now understanding setup properly rather than you would just stayed in and sure you might have picked up a win on paper, but would you have fully gone in entering with the right setup or not in your head, right?
Right. Yeah, for me, I would have categorized that in the matrix of good trade, good outcome, good trade, bad outcome, and then on the other axes, bad trade, good outcome, bad trade,
Exactly.
bad outcome. That would have been a in the bad trade category, regardless of the outcome for me. So, and that's ultimately what I'm trying to iron out. The outcomes are the outcomes; they're probabilistic. I'm just trying to get all the entries, the analysis into the good side. Um, but
Yeah.
anyway, I think that's that trade covered. Then there was and actually right when some of us were in this trade, and someone had asked Adam the question about the 47 because his trade plan was actually to look for the reclaim of. 45 was the level, but look for the reclaim of 47. And I think someone had asked the question, is 47 still a valid entry? And he had replied, right when we were in the middle of this kind of pre-market dip, he replied, best to wait for 51, which was the add-on strength level from the trade plan. And we mentioned it in the pre-market prep as well. Kind of took a screenshot of that from the pre-market prep video this morning, and then what we said about it. This was how it was looking, and as we were talking about that level, if we get a burst of strength off the open, then the 51 add-on strength is certainly an option, and we've dipped off it already. And I think if we see one more dip off it, then a push through with momentum would be a valid entry. So that was from the pre-market plan, and that's exactly what transpired. I'm going to just bring up the other chart here so we can see kind of the acceptance of that in a bit more detail. So got the 15-minute on the right here still, but the range chart, which I mean, kind of think of as a lower time frame, just kind of shows those swings a bit more cleanly. But right here at about 8 o'clock Eastern time, we pushed up to 49, so just a couple of points shy, and then dipped back down to the 38 level, so dipping 10 points off of it. So that's our first swing of the type 1 acceptance in the pre-market. And then right off the open, we started to lift up to it, poked through by a point or two, and then dipped back down to about 44, 45, kind of retesting that level and then just ripping up through it. So type 1 acceptance, very clear, doesn't get much cleaner than that, I'd say. So, even if you missed I think it's fair to say a more complex entry around the 40 to 45 levels, just because of the amount of structure in there and because the volatility
Mm.
was low. I would certainly consider that a more complex entry. But if you miss that, don't worry. There's always something just around the corner. And Adam, as we said, Adam had tweeted, it might be better to wait for that to clear. I think the main point there is we've been in a bit of this sideways consolidation. The key point is wait for it to clear with momentum, not just kind of lazily chopping through it. And that's exactly what we had. So much momentum that I actually missed it in taking my dog out for 2 minutes, believe it or not. So that's been second error of the day for me. But yeah, one of those days. So, but you didn't have to worry about that because you were in runners just sitting back. But hopefully, a lot of the folks in the Discord caught it.
Yeah, I thought the that had a really nice acceptance there. So if you missed the earlier entry, that was a secondary option there that ended up being pretty good. But yeah, I think overall, like, a good point I would like to make here is just, always remember that there will always be another setup around the corner. Even when you don't think there will be or it looks grim for the moment, we usually within 24 hours will get something else. So, for example, I was also eyeing the setup that Tim was eyeing last night with the above 45, but just because the timing and how slow it was, I just decided to pass on it because I felt I wasn't going to get a trim by the time I went to bed,
Nice.
which I was okay with, right? I'm content knowing that, hey, I might wake up and maybe we're 30 points off of this and I missed a setup yesterday. That's okay. I just wait for the next setup to appear. And thankfully, we did get one this morning for me to hop in on. So just always key to remember is don't feel FOMO, because you think that this setup is the last one that's ever going to happen in ES, and now we're just going to ramp up to all-time highs. Like, you will always find a setup, and you just have to just wait for the fat pitch. Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes it might take two max, but you're not really going to have, a stretch of multiple days in a row where there just isn't some sort of high quality failed breakdown. So just wait until you like it, identify the acceptance, and once you can identify it on paper and you can visibly point to it, enter, have your take profit in place, have your stop in place, and then just wait and see what happens. I mean, for me, I think too now, I would say the biggest resolution for 2026 is I feel like I've already done a pretty good job of this, but I still think I can work on it more and take it to the next level. But it's just being as robotic as possible, right? Like, I just don't want to have any emotions, any sort of feel or gut instinct of what I think might happen. It's just act like a robot, right? This setup appears, it's your setup, it's a failed breakdown. This is how you enter it, this is how you exit it, this is how you stop out. That's it, simple. You don't need to think about what's happening in between. This morning when I entered at 45, there was essentially drawdown for like an hour and I was just sitting there, right? I didn't overthink it. I wasn't trying to overcomplicate. Oh, is it gonna now take a stop and what's gonna happen? I mean, as long as we were above 69.31, I knew the failed breakdown was valid, so I just have to sit and wait. and either I'm going to get my take profit or it's going to stop out, and that means I can potentially re-engage in something else. So just try to be as robotic as possible. I think it's definitely easier said than done, but definitely one of my big resolutions for this year.
Yeah, it's simple when it all comes together, isn't it? It's just that overthinking, which is what I fell victim of today. So for me, the for the rest of the day, my goal was to not compound those two small errors into something bigger. So it's just been an exercise in sitting on hands and doing something else. Just wanted to touch briefly on your stop though. So you entered at around 45, 46. Just because there was a bit of discussion in the Discord this morning about whether Adam, the size stops he takes. I mean, he never takes stops, so it's a little bit of it's a little bit skewed. I think I can recall him taking two stop outs last year for the entire year, and not anymore. But there was a bit of discussion about whether he takes any greater stop than 15 points. I was always under the understanding that he's always using a structural stop. So if it
Yeah,
is more than
yeah.
15 points, he's sizing down. But some of the other folks pasted in
Yeah,
quotes from him.
I've always thought this was a bit clear. I'm actually surprised there's confusion about it. But yeah, so it's essentially I do the same thing. So 15 points is my max full stop. So let's say I enter a trade. Let's just do sample numbers, right? Let's say an average trade is 10, right? 10 contracts with 10 ES on an average trade, for example. If the most you can take on a full size trade is 15 points, right? What does that give you? That would give you essentially $7,500 worth of risk, right? That is the max risk in dollar amount you're willing to risk per trade. But technically, if you wanted a 30-point stop to risk the same amount, you could do that, but instead of 10 contracts, now you enter in with five. Right? So that's how you always want to think of it. You think of it more in terms of like the total risk in dollars is the same, and you can just manipulate that based off of like contract sizing. So 15 points is the max you should have for a full size. If you need to have like a larger stop, in this case, I think what my stop size would have been, I mean, it was under 31. I kept it around like 27 or so. So technically it was 19 points.
Yeah,
So I would just size accordingly.
right.
So I would size so that the 19 points full stop would equal out a 15-point full stop. And that's how you size. And there's some other variables with sizing too. That I would say sizing sometimes is a little bit more of an advanced topic in the sense of the other sizing component is the quality of setup. So depending on how what you feel about the quality of setup. So for me, it's there's two components to sizing. One is obviously how far is the structural stop, but then the second component is what is the quality of the setup. So higher quality setups have a little bit more weight to me versus if it's a setup where I like it still, obviously. I'm not going to take something I don't like, but it still is like maybe it's in the middle of a range, volatility is slow, time of day, then I will automatically size that down. So sizing to me has always it comes down to like those two components, and it's Adam does the same. He's tweeted about it. He doesn't necessarily talk in the newsletter about the quality and how he sizes up, but I know like he has tweeted like, hey, depending on quality, he may even 3x it or 2x his normal
Yeah,
size.
yeah. I remember him
So
dropping that in last year, and definitely caught my attention. You can't see it, but I've just pulled up a sheet on the video showing kind of one way to look at it, which is kind of exactly what you said. It's just balancing stop size, and I've got it broken down into 10, 15, and 20 points versus what I deem to be the kind of the quality of the setup, A, B, or C, however you want to rank that. And so if it's in this example, if it requires a 10-point structural stop and I deem it to be an A grade trade, then I can enter 14 contracts to keep my risk within the acceptable limits that I've deemed appropriate for the account I'm trading. So yeah,
yep.
that's just one way you can kind of look at those. This is something I'm trying to adopt a bit more this year and be a bit more calculated about my sizing and my risk, with the main goal of actually limiting the amount of risk I put on for stops that are requiring wider that require a wide that have that wider structural stop, and then in combination with being lower quality. So yeah, I don't want to
Yeah, I
just
think the issue may come in for people now that I'm thinking about it, or potentially people who just have like one size entry fits all for every setup. So like if you're just like, hey, I'm gonna enter in with 10 contracts every trade, no matter what, and that sometimes can be problematic where it's like, oh, I need larger than 15 points. So should I be taking this? Is this valid? It's you have to have a little bit of ability to adapt, in my opinion, with sizing, if you want to be able to take everything. Because I don't know the math on how many setups we have that have 15 points or under stops, but I would say we definitely have quite a bit of deeper sweeps or failed breakdowns that do require a little bit larger than a 15 points stop. So you definitely want to be able to have some sort of dynamicism when it comes to sizing.
yeah. I mean, we've been having a lot of that non-acceptance protocol recently, so that already adds 5 points to the level, and then if you're a few points below the flush
Yeah,
low,
that's
I
10. That's
mean,
10 right there.
yeah, that's 10, even if the flush was only a point. So
Exactly, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
I,
But again, I think in some senses you have to always remember though, like keeping a wider stop actually in some senses is safer in the sense of you're just kind of giving the trade room to work. I know a lot of people also try to do add the math up as to like, oh, what is my R&R? Like I'm getting 5 points, but I'm risking 15. Like that sucks. I never really thought about it that way. I just think you need to think of it as, hey, this is a valid setup. If I do this correctly in terms of reading it correctly, it's a 90% win rate setup. So I just want to make sure I'm giving it room to be able to hit that, right?
mm-hmm.
And that's the best way to kind of think about it.
Yeah, yeah, you got to balance those two for sure. R and R can never look at that on its own. You got to look at it with the win rate. Okay, well, hey, thanks for joining me. Appreciate that. I'm sure anyone who watches this will get a lot more from what you've been able to add than just me alone. So appreciate that. Anything else you wanted to add before we sign off?
Oh, that's it. I mean, besides that, it's been a pretty straightforward day. So now we just, just kind of wait for the next one.
Yep, might need some time to work this one off, but let's see.
Yeah, we've put in a nice little failed breakdown spot now at 69.51. So that'll be for my I will be for tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we'll see.
So we'll see what we get.
All right, thanks,
But it's
mate. We'll catch you in the
thanks,
Discord.
Michael.
Bye for now.